Hello again everyone, Melth here and ready to roll with more of my Dark Souls challenge run. Among other difficulties, I made a mod to unlock secret enemies which most players will never have seen. Along the way, I'll examine the game's mechanics as well as its lore in detail, so beware of spoilers for all three Dark Souls games. So, I've got some fun things coming up this episode. But first I'm going to make a detour back to Firelink's Shrine to pick up a spell that I skipped at the beginning of the game because I thought it wouldn't be useful, because it's not useful on New Game, but I think it will be here. I tried just sprinting back past all the enemies, but there's a spot where the AI roulette can block you in and that's what happened, so I got killed. So I'll play this one methodically. Here I'm using the ladder to split the enemies up. As you're about to see, your souls are actually dropped a few seconds of walking before where you died. So this is not the actual spot I died in. Oop, didn't mean to do that attack there. If you hit the strong attack button with a catalyst, you actually do a useless attack instead of casting your spell. Mostly useless, that is. Watch how bad this is. There are actually a couple of catalysts in the game that have a useful strong attack though. At least for the point of the game you can get them, they can be useful. There's the Tin Banishment Catalyst, which if you get it in the early game, it actually does absurdly high damage. And there's the Tin Crystallization Catalyst, which you get super late in the game, and you'd never really use to attack, but if you wanted to, it would do a bunch more damage. You might wonder, as I did, why it's called the Tin Catalyst. And the answer is quite complicated. It turns out to be a bad translation. Basically, there are these staffs that Buddhist monks use, called kakaras. At least that's what they're called, I think, in India. They have a different name in Japan, but basically the important thing is that it literally means a tin stick, although they're not necessarily made of the tin. They're usually made of the wood with some metal rings at the top, which might or might not be made of tin. But the important thing is, number one, they're religious staff, and number two, they are sometimes used in martial arts. And so those are the staffs you can use to attack people, but they're also, interestingly, in lore, associated with people who seem to be sorcerers, but also religious in some way. The Sealers of New Londo, and Logan after he becomes obsessed with Seath and starts treating him like a god. So interesting stuff that the translator's completely bungled. It just seems the enemies got stuck, preventing me from using ranging attacks against them. Well, what in the world was that? I had my shield up and I got hit through the wall. Okay. I mean, enemies hit through the wall pretty often, but I had my shield up there and that didn't even make sense. I might add that you can't hit back through walls most of the time. Once in a while it works, but not usually. It's just a way that the enemies kind of cheat, and it can be quite notable in these narrow corridors. I don't have a great way to deal with these guys without them coming through this gateway, where they seem to be getting stuck. Just one of the little issues in Dark Souls that's been persistent for a while. I'm trying to knock one of them off or get them to come through the door, one or the other. Or if I see them lined up, I can maybe go for a strong attack through the door, but you can see even there I get caught up. Okay. Thank you, auto-targeting. That was clearly the person who I meant to target, the guy who was behind me. With keyboard and mouse, there's no good way to change your auto-target target. Let's see if there's any new dialogue from the man with no name.
Don't you ever think to forge? You'd better find a
I'd love to find a smith box, but the only source in one is in the next zone. I guess it's a good clue that he exists, but it doesn't really tell you where to find him, so it's fairly useless to a new person.
How did that? You know, the one.
Here's our information about an NPC we'll be rescuing later on. This guy's your main source on the NPCs that exist, kind of, but he's pretty useless. He doesn't really tell you where they went. He tells you the Undead Burg, but he's actually in the lower Undead Burg, and so on.
I hope he enjoys his
Big Cat Logan is kind of a legend, as we're seeing. Lots of people refer to him. Crestfallen Warrior, useless as usual. Okay, nothing else to say.
Oh, hello.
Petrus is the one I wanted to buy things from. So normally the Miracle Force is complete garbage, especially at that high price. Maybe I'll buy Seek Guidance just for fun. I think I'll pass on Heal. I have so much humanity I can just use Kindling Bonfires if I ever needed more healing, which I think is unlikely.
Come again. The effect...
On to the blacksmiths. They got so much random Titanite last time, might as well use it for a few upgrades. Although, since I'm going to get a new weapon soon that's going to supersede most of these, I'm not sure which ones are actually worth upgrading. I think I might go with the Rapier to see if that will allow me to actually instant kill things with the riposte. That might actually make it worthwhile. And maybe the Uchikatana to just be able to do more damage overall with bleed. That is more total damage, including the bleed, as part of the DPS compared to the new weapon I'll be getting. I think I'll go with the Rapier. This won't matter for the long term. Once I get to the next zone, I get infinite Titanite anyway, but see if it'll help on the way. You can see that the prices in Titanite increase as you go along, but the price in souls are just small and don't increase. The price in souls is the same for any given weapon type. Alright, and now the long journey back. All told, on New Game Plus 6, it took me about 10 minutes to get out here, and about 10 minutes it would take to get back. Mind you, on New Game, it doesn't take anywhere near that much time, but it is still a dangerous route for a new player. One of the great parts about the experience as a first-timer is just that feeling of tension growing as you get further and further away from your hub world and from most of your useful NPCs. That tension is completely non-existent in Dark Souls 2 and 3, where you can just warp between bonfires, and so the world design doesn't really matter at all. But here in Dark Souls 1, it's one of the things that helps make this feel like a real place, rather than just a video game where everything is set up for your convenience. And it also, as I said, just helps build that stress and tension that makes the world feel like a hostile and dangerous place as you adventure through it. And of course, it also helps to make Firelink Shrine here feel like a special place of relief and rest, for both us and the characters. It helps you get into your character's head that way. Good design for a role-playing game. Ah, these guys have respawned because I went more than a couple of zones away. I will Homeward Bone out of here. Those are pretty rare items for the time being, but quite useful. Note, by the way, that they take you to the most recently rested at bonfire rather than the closest one or something like that. Well, I'm going to attune my new spell, Force. And to use it, I'll need to equip myself a talisman. Now, one thing to think about in this game, unlike in Dark Souls 2 and 3, is that you only have 4 main equipment, weapons, / other tool slots. But there's about 6 things that you might want to put in there. Melee weapon, shield, ranged weapon, pyromancy, sorcery, miracles. So you can't really have all of them ready to go on a single character, which I think leads to interesting choices. Now, let me demonstrate the way things seem as a new player. There are 2 paths we can consider here. If you go up here, the dragon's lying in wait, hopefully know to take cover over here. Otherwise, you get blasted. You get a bunch of free souls. It's a great place to farm souls as a new player, but if you try to get past, nothing doing. So you need to find another way through. Now, there is one. This bridge is so big that it has 2 levels, which strikes me as a great example of good 3D design in this game. You can see the dragon up there with its tail hanging down. We'll talk about that a bit more later. Anyway, this is one of the great things about the game, I think, just how non-linear it can be, and how here there are just 2 paths running in parallel into the same zone, only one of which you need to do, but as a new player will probably do one, and as an experienced player will probably do the other. So here's one of the guards. Let's see how my new weapon does actually. I'll change things up to the Rapier and test whether a riposte with that thing will actually take this guy out or not. Let's see. Oh, I think I've aggroed the spear guy over there. Okay, well, that'll be fine. He moves pretty slowly. Alright, back around the corner. Oh yeah, there's the sword guy again. And need to learn my new parry setup here. There we go. Oh, not quite a kill. So the upgrades weren't really worth it at all. Oh well. As I said, I'll get plenty of Titanite in the next zone anyway. And I'll have a new weapon soon. So let's see my new Force Miracle at work here. I'll just blast that guy off the cliff. No damage, but it knocks people back and it breaks their shield blocks. Not good on a new game, but fantastic here. Now, there's a bunch of rats up ahead, and rats are surprisingly dangerous enemies. Now, this again shows kind of how ad hoc the AI is. Most rats are cowardly and run away, but here these rats arbitrarily will not only stand and fight, but will rush out and attack you, to make a very dangerous encounter. Doesn't make much sense from a role-playing perspective, but makes for a good game design encounter. So I'll try to bait them out one at a time here. Rats have quite dangerous attacks that come out very fast and inflict poison even through your shields. And at this point of the game, there is no cure for that, so if you get hit and poisoned, you might as well just go back to the bonfire. There's no way to fix it. Ooh, that didn't work as well as I thought it would. Okay. Alright. Quite dangerous enemies, as you can see. Very fast attacks, almost no lead into them. By the way, they can't be backstabbed or riposted. Mostly only humanoid enemies of your size can be. Ah, there's a humanity. That's why I didn't just force it out the cliff. They have a good humanity drop rate. So, I think I will drink an Estus to heal up, and then pull the next one over. I won't use force on him. Again, number one, test how good my weapon, so I'll try two-handing against this one. But also, they do have that good humanity drop rate. So, try to fight this one, but I'll just circle and then do two-handing. Now again, you can't backstab these guys, so don't even try it. There we go. Okay, so two-handing does enough damage that with bleed, it does kill them. It's pretty good. The next one, you can't really shoot with an arrow. He's lying in wait, hidden around a corner. Pretty nasty little surprise there if you walk into that room for the first time. Yeah, I might knock this one off with force. We'll just see how that goes if it knocks them back as far as I think it will. Force, although it looks circular, actually has a much bigger range in the front than it does to the sides or back, but it was big enough there. So now, having beaten those enemies, you can proceed and get to the next zone, the Undead Parish, which you're kind of told about, although under the name Undead Church, by the Crestfallen Warrior at the beginning. So if you go up the stairs, you'll probably get killed by a mini-boss. Then back over here, you can see this big portcullis blocking us out of a room that has a bonfire. So just kind of taunting us, telling you that you missed something, basically. But how did you get there as a new player? No obvious answer. There's your next enemy. So, as a new player, you need to fight your way through that little bridge room with the rats and everything every single time you want to go through the Undead Parish, which is pretty painful. Alright, let me take this guy out, and then we'll talk about the other path, I think. Should be pretty easy to just take him out with backstabs and bleed, I bet. Especially if I upgrade my weapon. These guys are a little tiny bit stronger than their counterparts in the Undead Burg were, but it's not going to be a big difference. That's him. Notice the grill over there by the side that's been removed and damaged, it looks like, to open a path down here. I will admit, the lack of design and furniture to this little room under the bridge is kind of lackluster. I'm not really sure what purpose it served back when the bridge was intact. But having two parallel paths is pretty interesting design, I think. So we get some beautiful views out here toward the forests of Loradron. And you can see most of the Undead Burg there, including the details of where we walk through. There's the encounter with all the spear hollows, then there's the walkway up to Havel's tower at the corner, then the long, high crenellated path where we fight the Taurus demon. It's so beautiful to see how it all fits together here, and you can see where you journey through. Alright, now let's show the other path, the one that you'll discover at some point. Maybe by reading a guide about it, maybe otherwise. So take cover, then you can either wait 15 seconds, or you can provoke him. Either way, he hops down to the bridge, and that is your chance to just run on past him. It's that simple, really. Don't know how you're supposed to discover it. It's not really obvious. I'll just be waiting here. As I said, it's 15 seconds after the last time he thought he had a target. Then he'll hop down, then you just sprint. And even at medium roll, you can make it pretty easily. He'll just breathe fire stupidly straight ahead. He really doesn't have much of an AI, to be honest. But here we reach the bonfire chamber, some kind of little temple or shrine. And sit down, and there he goes. Flying away into the distance. Now we've got a red vagrant to deal with over here, and he can actually provoke when you're near the bonfire and even kill you there, so that's frankly not great, but oh well. The hollows here are of the harmless bewailing their fate variety like we saw in New Londo Ruins. On the plus side, having this vagrant right near the bonfire does have one nice perk, which is that this is an infinite source of twin humanities that's very easy to farm up if I wanted to. Now I'm not going to abuse that to get 99 humanity, but I will from now on just stay in human form and not worry about it. And if I need to have more humanity to do that, I'll just generate some more humanity because it's fair game from here on out. Because I could just farm up 99 if I wanted to. Note, by the way, that although my weapons have been upgraded, the vagrants are getting tougher too. As I said, they get stronger and stronger zone by zone. And that kind of shows you, in fact, what the designer's intended zone order was, if you look through the game files. But soon I'll have a better weapon that will speed this up a little bit. I think I better back off there and not push my luck. Don't want to just get hit when I'm one hit away from finishing him off. That should do it. Okay, I'll get my twin humanity, very nice. Let's have a look around this ruined altar area. We see this smashed statue of Gwyn's firstborn son. It's called the Altar of Sunlight. Gwyn's firstborn son, the Nameless King, is one of the most enigmatic but important characters in Souls lore. We'll talk about him as we go along here. But basically, Gwyn's firstborn son had his father's power, especially over lightning, and was a dragon slayer like his father, but he lacked his father's wisdom, and was ultimately cast out from among the ranks of his gods, and his statues smashed. Notice that he's wielding that weapon there that they call a cross spear, although later on, maybe as a retcon in Dark Souls 3, they said that he instead wielded a similar weapon called a sword spear. Never mind that. We get the famous Praise the Sun gesture here, and we can join the covenant dedicated to Gwyn's firstborn. This is the covenant that Solaire is in, the Warriors of Sunlight, sometimes called the Sun Bros. They're the co-op covenant, and we get our first offensive miracle here, one of my favorite spells in the entire game. In order to show off more of the game's content, I've given myself some Sunlight Medals, which are an item that are normally only available through co-op, but the servers are down, or super late in the game. And also a copy of the Boss Soul, which you get at the end of the game, and on a real New Game Plus 6 run would have 6 copies of already, which unlocks the supposedly ultimate but actually worthless miracle that is Gwyn's Sunlight Spear. None of these miracles are actually all that good compared to just using offensive sorcery or something like that, but they're a lot of fun. They're a heck of a lot slower than even heavy soul arrow, and you get a lot less ammo too, especially compared to regular soul arrows. The power is pretty high, but sorcery can outpace even that eventually. Lightning spears don't home in either. The one real advantage that they do have is very long range, which isn't useful if you just lock onto things and attack only within lock-on range, but if you manually aim and have some practice and some skill, being able to hit the enemies from quite far away, very valuable from time to time. So I'd say they're less practical, but they are more tactical and more fun for me as a player who loves these skill elements. Let me talk about this other statue here, by the way. It seems to be the center of this little shrine. It's a woman wearing a crown, holding a baby which is holding a sword. I often hear people say that this baby must be the son's firstborn, Gwyn's son, that is. Ooh, brought the thing about me back to life. I don't think that is the case. The main reasons for thinking so are, number one, the baby has a sword, appropriate for a god of war, and also it's near the statue that was definitely of Gwyn's firstborn. But number one, Gwyn's firstborn is very consistently associated not with swords, but with these cross spear or sword spear things. Also, why would they tear down and destroy all statues of him, but not the one right next to the one they just tore down? Why not just remove the baby in that case and leave just the mother statue of Gwyn's consort, whoever that is? Unknown, unnamed. I think a more plausible bet, given that it's wearing a crown, like Guinevere, Princess of Sunlight, and how she's the goddess of fertility and is worshipped by just about everyone, is that this is Guinevere with one of her children who is a warrior. Another possibility, this is Gwyn's unnamed mother and baby Gwyn. Gwyn also is a warrior and uses a sword, and it would make some sense to have his statue, or him as a baby, right near that of his son. Honestly, I think that's unlikely. It's probably Guinevere with some unknown, unnamed baby of hers. But I do want to present other possibilities. Alright, so the Vagrant will not leave me alone. Let me speed through this fight, perhaps. One thing that's very cool and very little known that I wanted to talk about, by the way, is this dragon bridge. It actually is a PvP zone. In fact, it's just about the only truly dedicated PvP zone in the entire game. With everywhere else in the game, if you kill a certain boss, you stop being able to do PvP in that area. This place is the only one I'm aware of that stays open forever. And once the Drake is dead, what more could you want from a PvP arena? This place is spectacular and it's wide open. I've had some very fun duels here, but sadly almost nobody knows about this place, so spread the word. So, let me demonstrate lightning spears. I am much too far away to lock on to those guys, but with some practice, you can eventually learn to manually aim and hit them pretty often. Bam! Instant death. How about that? Now, as you saw, they are super slow, and they're only good enough to instant kill because I invested so much into my faith already and have a good talisman. And it's pretty tricky to aim them like that anyway, at least during action. Yeah, I missed by an inch there. Part of the problem is that you step forward when you throw, which impacts where it'll actually end up hitting. Now I've taken cover, so I can show you how much damage it does through a shield. It won't kill him, of course. Of course, a heavy soul arrow is significantly faster, breaks his guard every hit, and if I had invested into intelligence, would do comparable damage. But honestly, I like those limitations, and I like the limited ammo. It feels more strategic. It feels like an elite spell, where if you're good, you can get a lot of mileage out of it, but you can't use it on every single enemy. I also just stylistically have always loved throwing lightning in just about any video game where it's possible. I'm a mite disappointed with how bad lightning is in Skyrim compared to fire most of the time. In fact, pretty much all the time. Trying to drink Estus right in front of me? This isn't Dark Souls 3, man. You can't get away with that here. Now, are you going to keep turtling up, sir? You are? Okay. So this new force miracle will help deal with nuisances like him. And now we get to the items that the dragon was guarding. First of all, an unremarkable little soul. Light crossbow is just a random drop. And the claymore. An extremely effective weapon, which the developers must have known, hence why they made it so hard to get. Once I can get to a blacksmith and upgrade it, it'll become part of my weapon repertoire. For the time being, I'm going to head back to the bonfire, and then if I exit out of the game, it should respawn the dragon at its normal place. It's time to talk more about Hellkite, and some interesting mechanics relating to him. I think I'll level up to take more endurance, so I can start blocking more hits and carrying heavier weapons like the claymore without being slowed down. You know, now that I've exited out, let me actually go human here. Just for fun. I'll just use one of my new collection of twin humanities to avoid degrading my stat humanity level. So, now that I've exited out, that resets the dragon's scripts, so it'll fly in again once I come up onto the bridge from the right position. It works in a very mechanical and artificial feeling way, to be honest. It feels like a video game obstacle rather than an actual intelligent enemy. And I really do mean it feels like an obstacle rather than feeling like a mini-boss or a boss. Anyway, this should make him spawn— ah, there he is. So I'll run for cover and I'll be just fine, despite the blasts of flame you occasionally see coming down here. You know, I'll run back up so he finishes off the other two hollows. Just feels incomplete now they're still up there. You can clearly see flames down here, but you just don't get hit. This is just the tip of the iceberg, though, or tip of the tail, maybe. His visuals don't match up to the actual hitboxes of his fire breath at all. A unique and fun mechanic in Dark Souls 1, and not the rest of the series, is that certain enemies, especially dragons, have severable tails. And if you chop the tail off by doing a bunch of damage to it, you get some kind of special weapon as a reward. Doesn't make much sense, but it's interesting. Getting hit here makes him land on the bridge, usually do an attack, and then fly back into place again and again because his AI is very lackluster. On New Game, you can easily exploit this to sever his tail with a few arrows. On New Game Plus 6, though, it would take hundreds, so forget that. I've got another fun idea in mind. First of all, I can just chop off his tail in melee legitimately, and I'll show how to do that too. But also, Lightning Spear is a dragon-slaying miracle. Let's see if Wyden can use it against this Drake like all the legendary gods he's heard about hunting dragons. I'm mostly trying to learn the timing here, because this of course is a moving target. My shoulder blocking my aim is also a bit of a troublesome feature. I think I figured out the timing. Perfect. That's worth 100 arrows. But I do need to re-aim, because every time you throw, of course, you take a step forward, which throws your aim off significantly in this case. One thing I want to add, by the way. Your horizontal angle is controlled by which direction your character is facing, whereas the vertical is controlled by how you point the camera. So very different controls there. It's one of the trickiest skills in the game. Close, but not quite good enough. I'll need to adjust a little bit. There we go. One more hit should do it easily. Heck, even one more arrow or two should probably do it. I'm surprised the tail is still attached because lightning spears do heavy damage. But it is New Game Plus 6, so he has like 7,000 hit points or something crazy like that, and his tail has, I don't know, a tenth of that or something. One disappointing thing about a lot of the Dark Souls games is although they tell us that lightning is for dragon slaying, it's almost never actually true. This guy is almost the only dragon in the whole series that is actually weak to lightning. This is almost the only chance for someone like me who loves the lightning spells to actually put them to good use. They were just ruined in Dark Souls 2 and 3, really. Even if I wasn't out of practice, hitting this moving squeaking tail when I can't even see exactly where I'm aiming would be quite tricky. There we go, so I get the Drake Sword, an overhyped but pretty good weapon. As I said, by the way, back in the first episode, Drakes and Wyverns are the same thing in this universe, it's the translators being inconsistent. The word in Japanese apparently means flying dragon. So a couple of unique things about the weapon. First of all, it gives a slight bonus to your magic and fire defense while you're wielding it. So you'll see if I unequip it here, my defenses drop a little tiny bit. Completely inconsequential really, but that's what the little shield icon under my stamina bar now means. It also is interesting in that, although it has fairly high stat requirements for a straight sword, it doesn't scale with any stats at all. It just has high base damage. Just 200 attack rating, which isn't really that good, but is powerful right now when my weapons are mostly unupgraded. So don't be fooled by people talking as if it's actually a good weapon, but it is good for about one zone before you get to the blacksmith and then everything else supersedes it again. One other thing that I won't show here because it consumes a ton of the weapon's durability and costs a lot of souls to fix, is you can shoot shockwaves with it. Most weapons you get from dragons have some kind of special ranged attack. Interesting, if not very good most of the time. Anyway, I bet a riposte for this thing will kill this hollow, even though the rapier couldn't. I was right. So if after 2 videos you were a little bit tired of me bleeding enemies to death slowly, good news, from now on my damage is much more respectable. Now, let me show you next that I don't need to resort to that skillful but cheesy way to get the guy's tail. And then we'll see if I can do the impossible and beat him in a head-on fight. Something I'm not honestly sure the designers ever really intended. Anyway, I'll rest and then exit out to respawn him. Now I have never seen anybody else beat this guy in a way that I think is legitimate or the way the designers intended. There are countless videos on YouTube about how to cheese him in different kinds of ways where he just can't fight you properly, or just blitzing him down with endgame quality weapons. He's very much a glass cannon, at least on New Game, so that's really not that hard to do if you just come back with super spells. It took me many experiments, but at long last I think I've found the closest thing there is to the intended way to fight him. So I'll first have him nuke those guys on the bridge. It's still going to be a very, very challenging fight. So now to save myself 15 seconds of waiting, I'm going to pull out my bow and shoot him once to get him to come down. The railing there is a little bit tricky. Then every millisecond counts. While he's jumping down, I'm charging up my lightning bolt and aiming it at his tail. Note that this part of his tail for no good reason takes 50% bonus damage. One more lightning strike while he does his fire breath. Then one sword strike, bam, his tail is severed that puts him into a stagger animation, which gives me just enough time to outrun his overhead doom fire breath which cannot be blocked or rolled or anything. Then I hurry back before he traps me in the bonfire room with the frontal fire breath and the fight begins properly. Now I run under him while he does his frontal fire breath. This is the only place I found where you can actually make him fight you, rather than him being totally helpless or you being unable to actually deal with him. Alright, I run for cover. This particular spot is the only safe spot available from his frontal fire breath or flying fire breath. You gotta manually aim here, which can be pretty tricky as you can see. Also, you must aim for the head, because the rest of his body is too far back and the lightning bolt will just fizzle out and go through him without damaging him. If he spams his attacks like this, you really can't do much but wait for him to stop. Guess I'll just do some tiny scratch damage on him with an arrow here. In most other positions on the bridge, he'll just spam his overhead fire breath at some point, which is absolutely uncounterable in most positions. Unless you happen to know about this one stupid hole in the hitbox where it just won't damage you even though you're clearly on fire. The only way to stop him from doing that attack in the first place is to be in front of his face so he tries to do his other attacks instead. He has a variety of physical attacks, which on New Game +6 are quite deadly. After each dodge, get back in front of his face so he does not do his overhead fire breath. This forward fire breath is the one and only safe opening to attack him. That foot stomp attack is quite deadly because it'll actually push you along, unlike most attacks if you try to roll it. And then as I said, the AI is trash and he'll just space out like this sometimes. Usually if you hit him once he'll come back to his senses and attack you again, but sometimes he just gets truly stuck. So to avoid cheesing him that way, what I found is if I just run to the side of his head, then that'll reactivate him too. Anyway, my finding is after every time you hit him in the face, there's a high chance he'll then attack you, but occasionally he just gets stuck, and in that case, the only way to unstuck him is to run to the side of his head. I won't take advantage of him spacing out and just hit him with a lightning bolt while he's stuck. That would feel cheesy to me. So, this is how you fight him in melee. You can see that my damage is absolute trash, even with the Drake Sword, the best weapon available to me. It would take me about 250 hits with that to kill him. But I think you can see that I'm quite good at dodging him, so I have done that and could do it eventually. Sooner or later though, he'll jump back, and then it'll be fair game to lightning bolt him again. He's really being unusually dumb today, even for him. Okay, time to try to unstuck him. There we go. As I've said, he has a bad AI and he is buggy as heck. It's pretty clear the designers never really intended for you to fight him. Just to either run past him or come back in New Game Plus with ultra weapons and stomp him. This is the closest you can have to a legitimate fight. The other semi-legitimate thing I see people do is fight him near the stairs and run up and down those continuously. That's basically the only way to avoid his overhead fire breath attack that isn't standing the one silly blind spot that it has for no reason. I want to reiterate, by the way, that this spot here in this corner, this is like the one pixel on the whole battlefield where you have cover from the flying fire breath attack. Even the obvious counterpart spots on the other side of the bridge just inexplicably do not work consistently. The guy's hitboxes are absolute garbage, and what is cover and what is not defies all reason. I do think that this is probably the intended spot to fight from and take cover in. Oh, take note by the way, this will not block the overhead fire breath attack. Even though from many positions it logically should, it just doesn't. Nothing blocks that. The Drake Sword swings are really not good for hitting a target that's above you. Even if you aim the camera up, you just can't really swing very vertically. So aim for that one saggy spot in his neck. That's the one that's most consistently in reach. As I mentioned earlier, by the way, lightning bolts are like the legendary dragon slaying weapon that Gwyn and Gwyn's firstborn son and all the dragon slaying knights use to bring down dragons, so Gwydion is very, very happy to have a chance to do that and be like his heroes. This is what Dark Souls dragon slaying is all about in lore. 10 out of 10 AI, I'll try to reactivate him. Again, if you just want to cheese this guy and not even have a real fight, that's very easy to do. Having anything close to a fight like this is the hard part. It requires constant work by me to get him to activate his brain again and keep fighting. Without the fight devolving into garbage where he just spams out his overhead fire breath attack and I just sit in the one blind spot poking him every time he lands for one hit. And again, if I wanted to, I could just lightning bolt him while he stands still, but that would just feel cheesy to me. Oh, side note by the way, you probably noticed I did not get another Drake Sword when I severed his tail. You only ever get one copy of a tail weapon. If he ever does do his overhead doom breath attack by the way, in most positions that is just game over, there's no way to possibly outrun it. But if you have enough warning, you can sometimes run back around the corner of the bonfire room, and that will sometimes but not always protect you. That still usually ruins the fight though, because then he'll tend to just start spamming out his forward fire breath attack, blocking the bonfire doorway, and never stop doing it. And if you ever try to leave the bonfire room, he'll just fly off to the horizon and you'll have to restart the entire fight. To touch again upon an earlier point that I made about its tail, or parts of his tail taking bonus damage, some better dragon fights in the series built upon that decent idea and made, the head of the dragon, things like that, be a weak point that takes bonus damage. For this guy, just for some reason, part of his tail that then gets cut off, and not his head. His head is not a weak point. His fire breaths also have their own sweet spots and sour spots where they do bonus damage or reduced damage. On this new game +6, that doesn't matter, of course, because they'll all instant kill me anyway. But generally speaking, being near the center of the bridge, you take more damage. It's really not consistent though, and the visuals are not at all proportionate to the damage that you'll take. Being near the epicenter of his forward fire breath attack will barely even tickle a character with good armor, but being 5 feet from the center of his overhead breath attack will just instant kill even a person with massive hit points and great armor and everything. Even on new game. I think it's the most deadly attack in the entire game. And again, you can't even try to block it just ignores your shield flat out. But being the same distance from the center in some other direction will barely even hurt you, or even you won't take damage at all. So again, there are big time sweet spots and sour spots, but there's no logic to them really. The visuals don't match up to where you actually take the most damage consistently. It can ultimately make the fight feel luck-based even. Here we go. How about that? First try. I've never before seen anybody fight this guy legitimately with early game weapons like I've got, let alone on New Game +6. I think Gwydion has more than proved that he deserves to be counted among the Warriors of Sunlight. I got a pretty nice chunk of souls for that, although it's not as many as you might think. The next boss will actually drop more. I think I'll keep leveling up my endurance for now. I want the stamina to block some hits. I think I'll kill one more guy to get one more level up. I'm so close to it. Uh-oh, can't dodge while I'm sitting down. Well, that's pretty funny. Hit while I was at the bonfire and not quite killed. Alright, there we go. Now on to the next big challenge. Alright, so I've just cleared out all the enemies in this area, even the mostly harmless hollows, just so that I don't have a problem with, say, the lock-on camera locking onto one of them through the wall while I'm trying to fight the next guy. A mini-boss. Specifically, another and more dangerous Black Knight. I'm gonna take this guy out efficiently with a lightning spear here. The Black Knight is up the staircase near where you come up from the other passageway into the Undead Parish, which can often mean that as a new player you just go up there and get massacred immediately. No particular reason I'm aware of for him to be up here. Really, most of the Black Knights don't have too much lore to where they are. Possible exception to the one in the Tomb of the Giants, and possible exception to the ones in the Undead Asylum later on. But the rest just kind of seem to be wandering lore drawn. So, I'm going to try to aggro him from behind with the lightning spear, which will hurt him more than a backstab would. This one you can see has a great sword, which means that unlike with the ones with the sword, I really can't block him. He'll just break through any block I can possibly do. So I've got my best parrying shield available here. I also have improved my own parrying equipment, as it were. I've switched out the mouse I was using before for a new mouse that has multiple buttons on it. I need to get used to the new buttons, but this should prevent all of those deaths that I had last time where it seems that I actually hit the buttons at the right time, but the game read it as a momentary block rather than as a parry because I had to hit 2 buttons at once. Looks like he's stuck. Alright, getting him unstuck can be quite tricky. I need to avoid him hitting me through the wall, which he can readily do, and avoid having the camera block my view of him until it's too late or something like that. It's really not a friendly set of controls in this narrow spiral staircase. His AI really can't handle this place. I feel like they should have put him somewhere else if they couldn't get him to be able to navigate spiral stairs properly.
I move.
Yeah, there he is. Okay, come on.
For no man.
Gonna come down now? Yeah, here he comes. Okay. So let me talk a little bit more about parrying. It's way more complicated than people think it is because a lot of the information on most of the wikis is wrong as usual. But basically, most weapons in the game have 6 frames where they're actively parrying after you hit the button, and they happen immediately, no delay to it. If the enemy weapon hitbox would be colliding with you during those active frames, you then get your parry. But they have different amounts of recovery times, which are not all that clearly reflected in the animations. And there are a few weapons, like the buckler and the parrying dagger, that have 8 parry frames instead of 6, but then they have a longer recovery time, so it's not really that they're strictly better. Although for most purposes they probably are overall a little tiny bit better for parrying if you need the help. This is one of the most nerve-wracking things in the game for me, getting this guy to come down the stairs. But, here we go. I think he's coming now. Sure sounds like it. I'll see if I can run away far enough to get a lightning bolt on him. If not, I'll just need to turn... Oh yeah, here he comes. Okay. New parry button. Don't fail me now. Okay. Their attacks are quite tricky for me, because most of them come up very slowly with kind of a fake-out animation that you can easily be tempted to parry, but that will get you killed. But then one of their attacks, although they're using a greatsword, comes out super fast. Having the greatsword to do real damage is a nice help here, too. I mean, imagine if I was still doing like 60 damage like before. This fight would take forever. Okay. Yeah, did a good job there. Parry this fast attack. Yeah, I don't know why in-character gliding would fight these guys, because they're, the famous followers of Gwyn, but whatever. No way to explain most of your actions in character in this game. It's a game full of nonsense where your violence is the only solution most of the time. One more hit should do it, I think. Okay, first try, not bad. Sadly, no drops despite all my humanity. For me, that Black Knight, I would say, is probably the hardest one in the game. I just found the greatsword moveset to be so weird and hard to understand how to parry compared to the other ones. And of course, by the time I get to the later ones that are also possibly more dangerous, I have better gear myself. Well, I'm going to replenish my ammo because I've used so much of it up. Alright, I'm killing all the enemies in the area and then I'll cut back in before moving on to the main part of the zone. Note, by the way, that even this Drakesword that scales with no stats whatsoever still does more damage when two-handed with most of its moves, because there's some kind of multiplier built into the game for any individual move to make it do more damage, and two-handed ones are always higher pretty much. Okay, so on to the Undead Parish proper, which is another one of the game's best stages. It looks really beautiful, and it's full of memorable set-piece encounters. Coming up is a very cool mini-boss fight. You can see, I'm sure, a ton of hollow soldiers in there, but there's also that giant metal boar, and probably you can see a giant portcullis in the back there. That will be lowered soon. One of those hollows is scripted to run around the corner and pull a hidden lever that drops the portcullis and seals us in here. If you know what you're doing and are good at dodging, you can actually run right through, dodge past everything, close the portcullis yourself, blocking out the enemies, or even drop it on the boar if you have lucky timing and instant kill it. It's very difficult to aim lightning spears at enemies that are up above you, but we'll see if we can take one of them out like that. Oh, it went right through him. Okay, he must be just outside of maximum range. Now, the boar has a long aggro radius, and there are people waiting around the corner too, so I better have this guy come to me. Maybe shooting him will speed him up a little bit. Don't have enough lightning spears to use that on him. I need to remember I have a new parry button and not do the old controls. I'm worried that'll get me killed at some point along here in these proceedings. In the long term, of course, it'll pay off with not needing to ever worry about hitting two buttons at once again, but in the short term, it could go badly wrong. Now, I want to aggro this one next, but not the boar. Oh, there, you can see the scripted hollow in the back is ready to go around the corner and drop the portcullis down with the lever. By the way, you might wonder if you can run back to the bonfire portcullis and drop that yourself on the boar. Sadly, no. But still, 4 very different feeling ways to tackle this mini-boss is pretty impressive design, I think. Well, if he's going to turtle up, I'm going to use force to break him out of there. That should put him in a more aggressive mood. Thank goodness for weapons that deal actual damage. So I'm going to slink over to the right side here where the pillars can stop the boar charging and get up those stairs before he gets to me. Now up ahead there's a spear guy who will try to tank for 2 crossbowmen. I don't want to fight all 3 at once. See if I can take him out maybe with a lightning spear while keeping my head down so the crossbowmen don't shoot me. Oh, whoops. Well, if I go up I don't have much cover, so I probably better circle around him and then move to take out the range guys first, because if I just fight him, I'll get blasted for sure. That was some pretty good maneuvering, I think. Now I can watch all of them and no one can shoot me in the back. And luckily, spear guys are too slow for their own good. I'll see if I can knock one of these guys off to make it a one-on-one fight. Other hollows from down below will also aggro to me and could possibly catch me up here. So, there is no easy way to tackle this on New Game +6. Looks like someone is stuck trying to run through the boar. Great pathing there. Well, that means more guys are coming. This seems like a job for force. Oh, he got his shield up fast. I didn't want to do double attack there. That's me not getting used to this new mouse. Apparently force is not as reliable as I thought for getting them to lower their guard long enough for me to get a hit in. Well, let me go human for the sake of prettiness. Uh-oh, the vagrant just shot at me while I'm stuck at the bonfire. That could have killed me, would have cost me all my souls and humanity if it had happened. This vagrant is a real menace in that location. There was one infamous bonfire in Dark Souls 2 where 2 crossbows would aggro to you at the bonfire, and so if you actually didn't know that and looked away for a second, you'd lose all your souls. It was terrible. They fixed it in Scholar of the First Sin. I guess no one ever complained about this one because it's so rare to have a vagrant here. I'll use some lightning spears to speed this up because I am tired of fighting this guy by now. And I avoid fighting him near that pillar where my weapon might hit the pillar and bounce off. More twin humanity for the pile. Alright, gotta get back through all of these enemies again. Ooh, I almost got myself killed there. I hit the wrong button. I was trying to go for the parry button, but I hit my old block and spacebar combination. This is going to take some getting used to for sure, and everything is still instant killing me if I mess up once. If you're not concerned with skill and style, by the way, there is one other way to aim your lightning spears, which is that you can pull out either the binoculars or a bow and arrow, go into crosshairs mode with that, and then launch at that location. Now, even that's not as easy as it sounds, because besides being time-consuming, it still isn't going to be spot on, actually, because of the step forward and the angle that you throw at. So you still need to get used to the differences between what you see in the crosshairs and where it actually goes. I won't usually do that regardless. Alright, so I want to distract out the spearman who's around the corner so I have a clear path up the stairs to the group of crossbowmen. I could try taking the boar out with lightning, but I really want to get my souls and humanity back rather than risk losing all of them. Yeah, you're a slow and stubborn one, aren't you? Force betrayed me last time. Let's see if a lightning spear speeds things up. Aha, here's my chance. There we go. Remember what I said in episode 1 about all the eternally burning fires kind of undercutting the motif of the fire going out in the end of the age and whatnot? There's a lot of that in Undead Burg and Lower Undead Burg. I'm really underestimating how much lower the spear launches than how it looks while I'm charging it up. Hopefully putting some damage on him will make it easier for me to finish him off later. Or right now, actually. The backstabbing made me invincible, but I better turn around fast and put my shield up again. Let me go get my bloodstain. Oh, that is not what I meant to do. That has a vulnerable animation. I'd better knock one of them off. Okay, that's better. I meant to just grab my bloodstain, not the item. I almost messed up there because I assumed his first attack would be blocked and deflected, but it actually wasn't. If I'd done an attack, I might have died. That guy is stuck on the boar again. What a bore. Alright, I'm gonna just snipe him like this and get it over with. Okay, there are several ways to kill the boar at this point, but there's probably one more oh yeah, there it is. Hello there. Can definitely be easy to lose count of them during all the commotion here. One way to kill the boar is that it can lure it onto those flames down below, using the alluring skull item that we just got. I think I'll finish that guy off with a few arrows and just make it quick. Now, as I was saying, if you can aim it right, you can lure the boar onto those flames with the alluring skull. On New Game, this is enough to kill it, but on New Game +6, not even close. Likewise, you can use the alluring skull to lure him in range for a plunging attack, and that does decent damage. The lore of alluring skulls, by the way, is that they have a bunch of souls in them, and souls in this universe we find out are kind of life essence, and also, you know, souls attract life, and life attracts souls, and so forth, and so some enemies, but not all enemies, and there's not too much rhyme or reason to it, to be honest, will be attracted to alluring skull. It says hollows will be, but so will other things like this undead boar. There is a little bit more lore I can share about souls as we go along, but surprisingly little compared to what you'd think given how often they're talked about. It's mostly the same information being repeated. Jeez, I need to get used to this new mouse. A lot of heavy metal enemies like this guy are quite weak to lightning, so it does very good damage to him. Fire or magic work very well too. So that's 3 different ways to fight him. Ranged attacks, alluring skull, or using the portcullis. But there is a 4th way if you're reckless and brave. I think most of his attacks would probably be unblockable at this point. I'm not certain about that, but I'm going to try to roll rather than risk it. If I can get behind him and avoid provoking his dangerous hoof attack, there's one spot where he can be backstabbed if you come from the right angle. Now, on New Game that would kill him, but this is New Game +6. It's not going to be that easy here. I find, by the way, that it's best to be a little bit to the left of what seems to be his back. That seems to be the best spot to actually get a backstab from. If you get an ordinary attack there instead, you're in deep trouble because your weapon will bounce off and then he'll kill you. Anyway, a fun and unique and well-designed enemy, and a memorable mini-boss. It again raises questions about how in the world an animal goes undead in this universe, and why a bunch of hollows are able to cooperate with it. There's the jerk who closed the portcullis on us, just watching smugly, waiting for me to get killed by the several remaining ambushes. And there's the great church that represents the heart of the Undead Parish. Oh, something just died somewhere. Weird. At first glance, it may seem like a cool bit of lore and gameplay connection that, you know, enemies dying anywhere give you souls because life attracts souls and vice versa. The red phantom in there is giving away the ambush. Usually they're a bit more cunning. One of them runs away from you, and if you follow him, you end up being surrounded from all sides with a bunch of hollows waiting around the corners. Looks like several are coming out at once, even though they didn't actually go into their normal range. I think I'll fight them where I can crowd control them more easily. Anyway, I was saying that the idea that you get souls no matter where the enemy died because, you know, your life attracts the souls makes a certain superficial sense, but of course the hollows that you're around that are also seeking souls should get a certain number of those too, right? And they don't. Speaking of hollows, we're back to fighting mostly hollows for the rest of this half of the zone here. We just finished off what I think is the longest streak of bosses and mini-bosses close together in any of the Souls games. The Black Knight, the Havel Warrior, the Taurus Demon, the Hellkite Dragon, another Black Knight, and then the Fang Boar, all just one after another pretty much. Oh hey, I can do a plunging attack here. You can do a plunging attack not just against bosses, but pretty much anytime you're above an enemy. And it does significantly more damage, although when you're fighting non-boss enemies, you'll often just end up taking fall damage yourself too. There are still a lot of people waiting in ambush there, so I think it would be wise of me to pull them out 1 or 2 at a time. Discretion's the better part of valor. Alright, this is my new parry button. This is my block. Uh-oh, I've got 2 of them again. Oof, okay. I'd really better play more cautiously until I get used to this new mouse. Well, if the enemies are going to be that slow, I'll just drink an Estus here. Whew, almost got killed by the wall there. I could use a little bit more Estus to heal myself back up, but I don't think it's worth it. Close enough. Oh, that was unexpected. Hello there. These guys, again, are really meant to be an ambush. You're supposed to take the bait, follow the one hollow that runs away in, and then just swarm from all sides, and then learn from your foolishness there. If you don't fall for that trap, their AI is not too impressive. Having to deal with this ambush in the first place, as well as with several other tough enemies along the way here, is kind of your punishment for failing to stop the portcullis from being dropped in the first place. Although as a new player, you can't really know how to stop that. The whole thing, of course, is another excellent example of non-linear level design in Dark Souls, and you'll see again how everything fits together in this fun 3D way as we play through. I will say, not for either the first time or the last time, that this whole ambush scenario is very sophisticated thinking for supposedly almost mindless soul-seeking hollows. I mean, the front guy runs away from a source of souls, leading you to his buddies to seemingly share in the souls they could get from you, instead of just taking them himself, right? Let me try to lure out the people who are lying in wait around these corners, which you could maybe chalk that up to just mindlessly staring into space there waiting for someone to walk by, but the guy leading you into the ambush is definitely smarter than a hollow seemingly should be from most of what we hear in the lore. Look at that smug, smart hollow behind the portcullis over there, thinking these hollows are gonna kill me. Again, acting smarter than a hollow probably should in universe, but it makes for good game design and fun encounters, so that's probably why they did that, to be honest. You know, if they were actually intelligent enough and sophisticated enough to plan among themselves to defer getting souls now to then lead you to a better ambush position later and things like that, you'd think you could just negotiate with them yourself. Alright, the way looks safe here, but there are usually people waiting up above, unless they aggroed out earlier, which I guess is possible. Yeah, there's one more at least. So what could this building have been used for? Well, there are a lot of tables around. That might suggest it's a mess hall, but the multiple levels and ladders would be kind of inconvenient for that. Maybe some kind of church or city-related office and people were writing at these tables? Honestly, I'm not sure. But back here, we find the aptly named Mystery Key. The location of it itself is pretty mysterious, and really undercuts several theories I've read about why the person whom it frees from a jail cell was locked up there. The presence of the Mystery Key here, in this separate building, as I said, really undermines a lot of the theories about why he was locked up. Notice the unique-looking corpse over here, by the way, wearing armor. If he was over where the key was found, I might think that was related, but he's not, so I think it's probably just an artifact of some older design. Okay, I've taken enough damage that I might as well heal it up with Nestus now. I don't think I've said this before, by the way, but the Estus Flask heals a certain fixed amount of HP, not, for example, a percentage. Right now it heals 300 HP, but soon I'll be able to upgrade that quite significantly. Ah, there's a good Vagrant over there. Normally there are enemies on that platform I just left, by the way, but they must have aggroed out early. If you're playing online, by the way, for whatever reason, this is a really common spot for people to put down troll messages saying that there's a secret passage near here, when there in fact is nothing to find. This fog wall here is nothing to worry about, by the way, just one of these internal divisions of different sections of the zone. So, time to go back out into the open. Well, visually at least. On the right, I can actually drop back down to the little bridge area where I was over the boar before. Fun, but mostly meaningless 3D design there. There is a new and dangerous enemy type with his back to me. I could backstab him, but I think instead I'll just throw a lightning bolt, which won't kill him. He's a lot tougher than the previous guys. You can see we have quite a narrow area to fight in, which is good for him, because he can hide behind his shield while doing stab attacks with his rapier. He can also do parries and ripostes, and he has very quick, very deadly attacks, so extremely dangerous enemy. The area is very dangerous too. I don't want to have my sword hit the wall and get me killed that way. Undead Parish looks very open, but it's actually one of the most closed-in areas of the entire game. Almost everywhere you fight is a narrow hallway, although it doesn't look like one necessarily. I think that's a neat design choice, to get the mechanical change of pace of having very narrow areas to fight in, but not have everything just feel closed in and boring visually. What he did there, by the way, was his parry stance. Usually I wouldn't be this slow and cautious, but I really want to get to the next bonfire intact so I can upgrade my weapons and then have more flexibility and not need to do things this slow way in the future. This guy's attacks are faster than mine and will instant kill me, so there really isn't any room for error. There was a close call there where he didn't get staggered the way I would expect him to. Speaking of which, by the way, I can't stagger him as easily with attacks as I can most enemies. And I might add, these guys can run pretty fast too, so I don't want to just charge up a lightning spear and have him run up and stab me before it's done. Pulling him into this bigger room where I can circle him is definitely a key advantage to me in this fight, instead of the narrow hallway where his weapon dominates. The fact that enemies never get staggered by walls can make it a bit frustrating to fight them in these narrow spaces. So he dropped the Baldur leggings because this is a Baldur Knight, Knights of the ancient kingdom of Baldur that was destroyed by an outbreak of undead apparently. It was ruled by Night King Rendell, apparently, who was some sort of great hero. I think he's an interesting figure in the lore, but we don't really learn that much more about him. I do have an interesting theory that I'll share later on, though. Let me snipe this guy here. He's waiting in ambush along with another Baldur Knight. They hit you from two sides as you go around a corner. And here we get Petrus' shield, the Knight Shield. A strong contender for the worst shield in the whole game. It looks fancy, but look how much it weighs. 5.5 weight compared to just 2 for the Heater Shield. And across the board it has worse defenses than the Heater Shield. This shield is just god-awful. Never ever use it. The shields that drop from random hollow soldiers are much better than this one. I thought I remembered being able to see the Baldur Knight who usually lurks over there, but maybe I can't from this angle. Well, I'm going to continue journeying cautiously then. There's another spear hollow, once again in very narrow circumstances that greatly benefit him and make it hard for me to circle around him. Shall I try using force? Did get me killed once. Hopefully it'll either make him more aggressive or leave him confused. Yeah, that worked decently well. It broke his usual rhythm of just circling around to face me. So, there'll be another Baldur Knight waiting around the next corner. Kind of a two-sided ambush as I mentioned before. Hollow Soldier with a spear on one side, Baldur Knight on the other side. If you don't see it coming, you're in deep trouble. As with the last one, I think I want to pull this guy out to a more open space. Ooh, forgot they had a shield bash. This guy has a different weapon, and actually quite a different moveset as a result. He can't parry and riposte, but he has other moves that are quite dangerous in their own ways, and he still has very fast attacks. I don't think I can manually aim at this angle, but maybe if I touch the lightning spear, I can have it auto-aim by the time he gets close. No, it wouldn't let me lock on until it was too late. These guys are wielding the famous Baldur Sidesword, one of the game's most prized weapons. I'll be a lot more comfortable once I've gotten to the bonfire, and also once I have more practice again with this mouse. I'll have a much shorter path to them and not need to fight through that giant ambush full of hollows again once I've unlocked the shortcuts and so forth. Taking risks will feel a lot better at that point. Alright, we have a spectacular looking open air arcade along here. But once again, it's actually a fairly closed-in hallway, it just doesn't look like it. Mysterious forest that must be the fringes of Darkroot Garden, and the path forks here. Straight ahead is the bonfire, but to the left I can take a detour and open a shortcut. I think I'll take the risk and do that. Now there are no fewer than 4 Baldur Knights waiting in there, one of them a Red Phantom. I'm going to move very cautiously to see if I can avoid aggroing out the one that's most aggressive in there, and then I'll move down to kill the guy who closed the portcullis on me. This guy doesn't respawn, by the way. Him closing the portcullis is kind of a scripted one-time event. Likewise actually with that one hollow near the bomb thrower bridge in Undead Burg who opens the door. Amusingly, if you've come from the Undead Parish, that guy's AI can actually bug and send him to go backward through the entire Undead Burg to get to here, and then pull this lever to close the portcullis himself. Anyway, the key I just picked up there is one new players often forget about. The name is not very helpful. I'm going to try to sneak around to avoid the Baldur Knight if I can. And there's the halberd, one of my favorite weapons. One of the best weapons in the game, really. I look forward to getting that ready to go once I reach the blacksmith. Now can I avoid... Nope, here he comes, okay. Well, at least I've opened this shortcut, so if I do die, I don't have to do the entire thing over again. I don't want to try to do riposte here in the staircase where it's uneven. Their attacks are so fast I probably shouldn't even try a riposte on this new mouse yet. So I think instead I'll just try to get him to a nice open area, and then do circles and backstabs. Slow and steady wins the race against these guys. Again, it's not Dark Souls 3, buddy. You can't just drink Essus in front of people and get away with it. That was, in my opinion, the absolute worst thing about Dark Souls 3, just how fast Essus was in PvP. Anyway, I was mentioning the key, I think, the basement key. So the description kind of tells you where to go with it, but if you don't read that and forget that you got the thing, it can be very hard to tell where to go next at one point, because you might not have even noticed the other door near the Dragon Bridge and near Solaire, and by the time you clear this area and Darkroot, you've probably forgotten about it. Well, I went to try to pull out one of the melee enemies from not fighting 3 guys at once over there. There's 2 melee guys and 1 crossbowman. Let's see if I can soften this guy up. That should make a backstab be able to instant kill him, I think. Alright, Easy does it now. I really don't want to die this close to the bonfire. I'm going to take cover over here. You might have seen a red vagrant in the church over there, by the way. There are other dangerous red phantoms in there, too. It'll be a big challenge next time. Unlike this guy, seemingly, who's just gonna stand there. Not too bright. Oh, the regular vagrant is getting away. That one is going to be almost impossible to kill, I think, because I can't get past this guy very fast because it's New Game +6, and that vagrant can run away and fade so quickly. Well, inside that church is another mini-boss waiting, and actually a duplicate of him that's a red phantom and even stronger, who unlike the mini-boss will respawn. But here ahead is the old ruined church that the new church that I have my back to was built to replace. And here at last we get to the next bonfire, and to the second blacksmith. I'm sure you can hear him hammering away down below, which doesn't make that much sense, but is good design. It helps lead you downstairs to find him. Some picturesque ruins here, but there's no, iconography or statues that would tell us what this church is dedicated to exactly. So we can't really compare it to the new one and see any kind of change in the faith. The church has several layers of basement, and not a lot of seating space. Doesn't really seem to be all that practical, to be honest. But while I'm here, let me run across to meet another NPC. Not actually important, but might as well do it. This long path with woods blocking most of our vision is basically a disguised loading screen. As I run across this, the assets from Undead Parish are unloaded, and those for the next zone, Sen's Fortress, are slowly loaded. That's smart design, and it again helps things feel more like a world and less like a video game. Because you don't have to stop for loading screens, except if you, teleport somewhere or die, I guess. So here's a guy in a goofy looking onion helmet. Thinking to himself, if you can call what this idiot does thinking, I guess.
Oh, forgive me. I was absorbed in thought. I am Siegmeyer of Katarina. Quite honestly.
I mentioned that everyone we meet from Katarina have very German names.
I should say. The thing just won't budge. No matter how long I wait.
So here we establish just how complacent and incompetent this guy is. He calls himself an adventurer, but he's so mind-blowingly uncreative that when faced with a gate like this, his solution is just sit there and hope something changes. He has super strength, and all the time in the world being undead like us, and lots of powerful weapons and tools at his disposal. He could try climbing the walls. He could try driving in pitons to climb the walls more easily. He could batter down the gate. He could saw through it with a metal file. He could look for another way in. He could knock. He could find out the lore about the place and how you get the gate to open like we do. His whole character arc just kind of revolves around him being totally incapable of doing anything without your help. A lot of people like Siegmeyer or treat his story as a very sad one. I honestly hate everything about him. I think his story is trite, he's undeveloped, his armor set looks stupid and impractical, and his quest is mechanically annoying to do, and luck-based.
Well, you must be a new arrival.
Andre here is fun though.
Andre of a store. If you require smithing, then speak to me.
Once again, Astora seems to be the country of reasonable people. Originally, this guy was meant to be Gwyn's secret firstborn son, but they changed that. Now he's just a generic blacksmith with sadly no real lore. But we get a fun gesture from him, and very importantly, he is the only other source on the repair box that I already bought from the Undead Merchant. He sells it at a better price. And the only source whatsoever on the weapon smith box and armor smith box that lets you upgrade your weapons and armor at bonfires. He also sells infinite quantities of Titanite shards, so from now on, all my weapons can be upgraded pretty much at will, up to +5 anyway. So from here on out, infinite Titanite shards are readily available, and I will just generate as much as I need to upgrade whatever weapons I think will be fun to show. He has a great inventory in general. I'll replace my arrows that I used recently. Let's see, I already have a gajillion longswords. The broadsword is similar to the longsword but does a little bit more damage and has a somewhat less versatile moveset. Likewise, the bastard sword is like the claymore but does a bit more damage and has a worse moveset. The designers actually seem to have had a pretty good idea of what moves would and would not be useful, and so they balanced things accordingly. Although, honestly, the damage difference is too small to really make the broadsword or bastard sword ever be worth it. The war pick is a bad weapon, but, I'll get one and just show it in a fight or two. It's the only hammer that does thrusting damage. The Morningstar lies and claims that it does in one spot. He also sells the Cestus, which is our first viable fist weapon. They were kind of Roman boxing gloves, but weighted with metal to do more damage rather than less. I think the word comes from Greek kestos and referred to any kind of band or wrap or girdle, anything that goes around any part of your body, and they kind of go around your hands. I want to like the pike because I like weapons that have long reach, but the pike is insanely heavy and has very high stat requirements. And the really bad thing about it is it's actually not that long. In fact, its reach is pretty terrible compared to many other spearers or even to the halberd. For some completely nonsensical reason, several spears that weigh less are just much, much longer than it and make the entire thing completely useless. At least for fighting enemies, that is. There was a time when it was a super meta weapon for PvP. And his shields are useless and generic. I already have better things. Let's talk to this guy.
Most weapons and armor are mighty.
I think he has a great voice actor, and he tells you about how weapons and armor get damaged and repaired in this game.
If you notice durability running low,
On New Game, you probably won't have a weapon break until this point or after anyway. On New Game Plus 6, of course, it's a problem much sooner.
grindstone. The nice thing about weapons, they never betray you.
That's the closest we ever get to any kind of background lore info about Andre. There's some kind of betrayal maybe in his past. But there's no real further information about that. Some people try to make a connection with what happened to the Havel warrior being locked in a tower, but that idea is really, really tenuous at best. I'll talk about that more as I get into the Darkroot Garden area, I think.
There are two types of weapon forging. There's reinforcement and...
Really, Andre is more of a game mechanic than a character. Almost everything he says just kind of explains the game mechanics to you, which is honestly really important, because weapon upgrades are more important than leveling up in this game. Weapon upgrades are everything in Dark Souls. If there's one thing that must be well explained to the players, it is this stuff. The system, though, as with many things in Dark Souls, is really more complicated than it needs to be. I like some of the ideas of it, but the implementation is excessively complex, and confuses a lot of new players. The ability to ascend your weapons is locked behind 3 different gates, really. You need to have the right blacksmith, have the right ember, and have the right kind of titanite, and have the right kind of weapon for that kind of ascension. The purpose of all of that, probably, is to make it harder to get endgame quality weapon too early in the game. But they still left several ways to do that, and I think they could have accomplished the same thing better by just having 1 or 2 of those limitations and putting them more strategically in the world instead of being scattered, I would say, more or less at random in some cases. Some kinds of ascension just end up being a big nuisance to do, even when there isn't really either a game reason or a lore reason for them to be harder than others.
You can forge armor just like you do weapons. Forging armor is even easier than...
There's no ascension for armor, that's probably what he's
Will you
saying.
forge weapons or armor first? Well, that's up to you.
It's a trap.
Nobody wants
Don't be
to see
fooled.
you
Don't upgrade
go
your armor.
low.
I mean, not till you have infinite titanite. It is never, ever worth considering compared to upgrading your weapons. Improving your weapons is more important than anything in this game. Which is another reason, again, that, as I've said, Soul Level 1 runs that people often brag about are really not that impressive. Alright, that was quite a game. I'm still pretty pumped about beating the Hellkite Dragon first try like that. I'll pick things up next time with the next set of mini-bosses and a lot of new upgraded weapons to try out. And I'll be showing one of the greatest elements of world design in Dark Souls or any game, as well as what I expect to be one of the toughest bosses in the whole run. Thank you for watching, everyone, and a special thank you to my Patreon supporters. Illusory Thunder, Master Knight DH, Gregory, William Wakefield, Kenny Boggs, Danny Hall, and Jeffrey Morse. Don't you dare go hollow.